The moment Riley Simmons' ship was yanked out of hyperspace, he knew something had gone horribly wrong. He'd flown countless runs across the galaxy trading, transporting, and the occasional smuggling job, but never had he been pulled out of hyperspace so violently. His body slammed into the restraints, the inertial dampeners barely keeping him conscious. His ship, the Starstrider, screamed in protest as warning alarms filled the cockpit. Every light blinked red, and the console was a mess of flashing error codes. Riley's heart raced as he tried to make sense of what had happened. He was supposed to be on a simple delivery mission to XO7, a backwater planet in the outer rim of the Helios sector, delivering mining supplies to a small colony. Nothing dangerous, nothing out of the ordinary. So how the hell had he ended up crashing through the atmosphere of some fog-shrouded jungle world? Damn it, he muttered, struggling to bring the ship under control. He punched the thruster controls, but the engine sputtered and died. The Starstrider lurched violently as it entered the planet's thick atmosphere, falling through the clouds like a rock. The heat shields glowed red-hot as the ship descended, the friction rattling every bolt and rivet in the frame. With a desperate flick of a switch, Riley deployed the emergency landing thrusters. They sputtered to life just in time to slow the descent, but not by much. The ship skidded through the dense trees, ripping through the canopy, before finally coming to a jarring stop in a clearing. The impact slammed Riley forward in his seat, the last of the restraints digging into his shoulders. For a moment, everything was still, the silence broken only by the hiss of steam escaping damaged vents and the soft crackling of burning foliage. Riley let out a groan, leaning back in his seat, his head throbbing from the adrenaline. He was alive, though. Barely. What the hell was that? He checked the ship's status. Total systems failure. The hyperdrive was offline, comms were dead, and the thrusters were non-functional. His only hope was finding out where he was, what had pulled him out of hyperspace, and if there was any way off this planet. He activated the ship's external scanners, which were thankfully still operational. As the scanner swept the area, Riley noticed something strange. The readings didn't make sense. There was no sign of a colony, no beacon signal from XO7, and no indication of human life. He wasn't where he was supposed to be. Instead, the scanner picked up something else, something close. A life form. Humanoid in shape, but the energy signature was off the charts. It wasn't human, not even close. Riley's heart skipped a beat. Great, he muttered to himself, grabbing his multi-tool from the console. He holstered it to his belt and cautiously opened the ship's hatch. A wave of warm, humid air greeted him as he stepped out into the dense jungle. The air was thick, the smell of wet earth and strange vegetation filling his senses. Fog hung low to the ground, making it hard to see more than a few meters in any direction. The trees around him were enormous, their twisted branches stretching high into the sky, covered in thick, alien moss that glowed faintly in the dim light. His boots squished into the soft earth as he ventured further from the ship, his hand instinctively gripping the multi-tool. The dense foliage rustled with the sound of unseen creatures, and Riley couldn't shake the feeling that something or someone was watching him. The scanner beeped, growing louder. The life form was close. Very close. Before Riley could react, the fog parted, and a figure emerged from the shadows. She was unlike anything he'd ever seen before. Tall and lithe, her body seemed to shimmer with an ethereal glow. Her skin was a deep shade of green, smooth and iridescent, catching the light in a way that made her look almost otherworldly. Her hair flowed like liquid silver, cascading down her back, and her eyes, those glowing, electric blue eyes, seemed to pierce right through him. She was humanoid in shape but undeniably alien, her elongated limbs and sharp, delicate features giving her an air of both beauty and danger. Riley froze, his breath catching in his throat. He wasn't sure if he should be awestruck or terrified. The alien woman regarded him with a curious tilt of her head, her eyes scanning him from head to toe. Then, to his surprise, she spoke. Human, her voice was melodic, with an eerie resonance that sent a shiver down Riley's spine. I need something from you. Riley's mind raced. Was this a trap? Was she hostile? Or was this some kind of first contact scenario? His hands instinctively tightened around the multi-tool at his belt, though he wasn't sure what good it would do against someone or something like her. What do you want? He asked cautiously, taking a step back. The alien woman's glowing eyes drifted downward, and Riley followed her gaze, realizing with horror what she was staring at. She wasn't looking at his face. No, her eyes were locked on his lower half. That thing between your legs, she said softly, her voice laced with an almost predatory curiosity. I need it. Riley blinked, his brain momentarily shutting down. Was she seriously talking about Dash? Wait, what? He stammered, his face flushing red. I think you've got the wrong idea. I don't even dash. The alien woman's expression didn't change. She took a step forward, her eyes never leaving him, and Riley's heart started pounding in his chest. Was she messing with him? Was this some kind of bizarre alien seduction tactic? But before he could spiral further into panic, she clarified. The device, she said, her tone patient, as though she was explaining something obvious to a child. The stabilizer. It's in your ship, isn't it? The hypercore stabilizer unit. I needed to repair my own ship. Riley let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, feeling both immensely relieved and embarrassingly stupid. Oh, you mean the hypercore stabilizer? He laughed nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. Right, yeah. I've got a spare. Thank the stars you're not. He trailed off, his cheeks burning as he realized what he was about to say. The alien woman didn't seem to notice his awkwardness. Good, she said simply. Then you will give it to me. And you will help me. Riley blinked. Help you? Wait, hold on. How do I know you're not gonna, kill me or something once I hand it over? She tilted her head again, as if considering the question. You do not know. But you have no other choice. Riley swallowed. She had a point. His ship was trashed, and he had no way of contacting anyone for help. If this alien had a working ship or one that could be repaired, then his best chance of survival was to cooperate. He sighed. All right, fine. I'll help you. But I'm keeping an eye on you, just so you know. Her lips curved into what might have been a smile, though it was hard to tell. Very well, human. Follow me. As she turned and began walking deeper into the jungle, Riley couldn't help but wonder just how deep into the unknown he was about to go. The dense jumble seemed to close in around Riley as he followed Zara, her name he had learned during their brief exchange through the thick, fog-shrouded landscape. The alien woman moved with a grace that made her seem like part of the environment itself, her steps barely making a sound despite the uneven terrain. The glowing moss on the trees flickered in response to her presence, almost as if they were alive and recognizing her. It was eerie and captivating all at once. Riley, on the other hand, wasn't faring so well. Every branch and vine seemed to snag on his clothes or trip him up, his boots sinking into the soft, damp earth. He was sweating from both the humidity and the growing sense of uncertainty gnawing at the back of his mind. Zara was alien, that much was clear, but her calm, unbothered demeanor left him on edge. Her earlier statement about needing his help still echoed in his head. She spoke with such authority, such certainty, like she was used to getting what she wanted. He glanced at her as they walked, his mind running wild with questions. She hadn't told him much beyond the basics. She was stranded, her ship damaged. She needed his hypercore stabilizer, sure, but what else? What was she doing on this planet in the first place? And more importantly, why did she seem so comfortable here? Mind if I ask you something? Riley said, breaking the silence. Zara didn't stop walking, but she gave a small nod, acknowledging his question. So, you crash-landed here too, right? What happened? There was a brief pause before she answered, her voice carrying that same melodic resonance that seemed to vibrate in the air around them. My ship was damaged during a hyperspace jump. It malfunctioned, and I was pulled into this sector, just as you were. This planet's gravitational anomalies interfere with long-range travel. I have been stranded here for several cycles. Cycles? Riley raised an eyebrow. You mean years? Zara inclined her head. In your human measurements, yes. Riley felt a chill run down his spine. You've been stuck here for years? How have you survived? I do not need much, she replied simply. This planet provides sustenance. It is rich with energy and life. But without the stabilizer, my ship cannot generate the necessary power for interstellar travel. Riley was about to ask more when Zara abruptly stopped. They had arrived at the edge of another clearing, and in the center stood her ship, or what remained of it. The vessel was sleek, like a seamless blend of organic and mechanical design. Its hull was smooth and iridescent, pulsing faintly with dim, glowing veins that stretched across its surface like circuitry. Despite its alien elegance, it was clearly damaged. One side of the ship had been torn open, exposing a complex network of dark, unfamiliar technology beneath the surface. Riley's eyes widened as he took in the sight. Whoa! That's some impressive tech. What kind of ship is this? Zara didn't answer right away. She walked toward the ship, her fingertips brushing along its surface. It is of no concern to you. What matters is that I require your stabilizer to repair it. Riley frowned, but kept his mouth shut. He approached the ship cautiously, eyeing the exposed tech. All right, I'll get the stabilizer from my ship, but if you don't mind me asking, what exactly am I supposed to do after that? You fix your ship, and then what? You just leave me here? Zara turned to face him, her glowing eyes narrowing slightly, as if she were studying him more closely. That depends on whether you continue to be of use to me, human. There was something unsettling about the way she said it, like he was just a tool to her, something to be used and discarded as necessary. But what choice did he have? His ship was beyond repair, and without Zara's help, he was stuck on this strange, isolated planet. Riley sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Okay, so assuming I hand over the stabilizer, what's the catch? There's gotta be more to it than just that. You're not telling me everything. Zara's expression didn't change, but there was a brief flicker in her eyes, almost like amusement. She stepped closer to him, the glowing veins on her ship casting an eerie light over her face. You are correct, human. There is no more. Riley tensed, his instincts screaming that this was where things were about to get complicated. More? What do you mean? Zara's voice dropped to a lower, more intimate tone. My ship requires a specific bioelectric charge to activate its core systems. The stabilizer will allow me to repair the primary power grid, but the core must be awakened through direct energy transfer. My physiology alone cannot generate the necessary charge. Riley blinked, not entirely following. Wait, so what does that have to do with me? Zara's glowing eyes locked onto his, and she stepped even closer, invading his personal space. Humans emit a unique bioelectric frequency. Primitive, but compatible. I require your energy to complete the activation. Riley's heart began to pound in his chest, his mind racing. Wait, are you saying you need me to, plug myself into your ship? How does that even dash? Zara raised a hand, cutting him off. No. It is not so simple. The energy transfer must be conducted through our nervous systems. It requires direct contact. Riley's mind reeled. Direct contact? Nervous systems? His face flushed as the implications started to dawn on him. You mean, like physical contact? What kind of contact are we talking about here? Zara's lips curved into a small, enigmatic smile. Do not concern yourself with the details, human. The process will not harm you. In fact, she paused, her eyes gleaming with a strange intensity. You may find it pleasurable. Riley's brain nearly short-circuited. He wasn't sure if he just stumbled into the weirdest negotiation of his life or the beginning of something far more dangerous. Okay, hold on. You're saying you need me to what? Fuse our nervous systems together? And it's supposed to feel good? Zara's gaze didn't waver. Yes. The energy transfer is a delicate process. Our bodies must be in close proximity for it to succeed. Once it begins, your bioelectric energy will flow into my ship's core, reactivating it. Riley felt a bead of sweat trickle down his temple. This was getting way too complicated and way too intimate for his liking. But what choice did he have? Without Zara's ship, he was stranded here, with no hope of rescue. If this energy transfer was the only way to make it off this planet, he had no real option but to agree. He swallowed hard, trying to keep his voice steady. All right, fine. I'll do it. But if you try anything funny, I swear dash. Zara's smile widened ever so slightly. You have my word, human. I will not harm you. She reached out, her hand brushing lightly against his chest. In fact, I think you will enjoy it more than you expect. Riley's heart skipped a beat at the touch. Her skin was cool, but there was an underlying warmth that made his pulse quicken. He forced himself to take a step back, trying to regain some semblance of control. Just let me get the stabilizer from my ship. Then we'll figure out the rest. Zara nodded, stepping back and allowing him to return to his ship. As he walked away, Riley couldn't shake the feeling that he was getting into something far more dangerous than just a simple energy transfer. There was something about Zara, something he couldn't quite put his finger on, that both intrigued and unsettled him. As he reached the clearing where his damaged ship lay, he glanced back at her. She was watching him, her glowing eyes following his every movement, her expression unreadable. Riley sighed and shook his head, muttering to himself as he began searching through his ship's wreckage for the spare stabilizer. This better be worth it. Deep down, though, he wasn't entirely sure what he just agreed to or what Zara truly wanted from him. Night had fallen by the time Riley returned to Zara's ship with the hypercore stabilizer tucked under his arm. The jungle around him was even more alien in the dark, with bioluminescent plants glowing softly and strange creatures chirping and rustling in the underbrush. The two moons of the planet hung high in the sky, casting an eerie, pale light through the dense canopy above. As he approached Zara's vessel, his heart raced, not just from the exertion of the walk, but from the weight of what was about to happen. The entire time he'd been retrieving the stabilizer, his mind was filled with uncertainty. He had agreed to the energy transfer, agreed to let this strange alien woman siphon power from his body to reactivate her ship, but he still wasn't entirely sure what he'd gotten himself into. Zara stood at the entrance of her ship, bathed in the soft glow of the vessel's dim lights. Her silhouette was striking against the backdrop of the ship, her silver hair cascading down her back, catching the moonlight. As Riley approached, she watched him with those glowing blue eyes, unreadable and unblinking. He couldn't tell if she was impatient or simply waiting for him to make the next move. "I've got the stabilizer," Riley said, holding it up as he stepped closer. Zara's gaze flicked to the device, then back to him. "Good. With this, I can repair the primary power systems." She turned and gestured for him to follow her inside. Riley hesitated for a moment, his stomach twisting with nervous anticipation. This was it. Once he stepped into her ship, there was no going back. But he didn't have much of a choice, did he? Taking a deep breath, he followed her into the vessel. The interior of Zara's ship was just as strange and beautiful as the outside. The walls were smooth, curved, and organic-looking, as if the ship had grown naturally rather than been built. Soft, glowing veins of energy ran along the walls, pulsating in time with some unseen rhythm. The air inside was cooler than the jungle outside, and the soft hum of dormant technology filled the silence. Zara led him through a short corridor to a central chamber. In the center of the room stood a tall, oblong console with a translucent surface, filled with alien symbols that Riley couldn't even begin to understand. The room had an otherworldly atmosphere, almost like being inside a living creature. The glowing veins in the walls grew brighter as they entered, as if responding to their presence. Zara moved to the console and began to work on the ship's systems, her fingers gliding over the symbols with practiced ease. The ship responded immediately, faint humming turning into a low vibration, as if it were waking up. She inserted the stabilizer into an open panel, and the ship's lights pulsed brighter for a moment before settling into a steady glow. "The power grid is stabilizing," she said, more to herself than to Riley. "The ship will be operational soon, but the core systems remain dormant. They require the energy transfer, as I explained." Riley shifted nervously on his feet. "So, how exactly is this going to work? You still haven't explained what you need me to do." Zara turned to him, her eyes locking onto his with that intense, almost predatory look again. "The energy transfer must take place in close proximity," she said, stepping closer to him. "Your bioelectricity must be channeled into the ship's core. To achieve that, our nervous systems must be synchronized." Riley's pulse quickened. "Synchronized? And how do we do that?" Without answering, Zara reached out and placed her hand on his chest. The touch was cool but electric, sending a tingling sensation through his skin. Her fingers splayed across his chest, and he felt a faint pulse of energy, like a static charge, ripple through him. "Relax," she said softly, her voice soothing but with a hint of command. "The process will not harm you. But you must allow the connection to form. If you resist, it will only prolong the transfer." Riley swallowed hard, feeling a mix of fear and anticipation. He wasn't sure what she meant by connection, but the tingling sensation was growing stronger. Zara stepped even closer, her body almost pressing against his. Her eyes never left his, glowing with an otherworldly intensity. His skin prickled with nervous energy as she placed her other hand gently on the back of his neck, her fingers brushing against his skin in a way that made him shiver. There was something oddly intimate about the touch, but it wasn't entirely unpleasant. In fact, the longer she held him, the more his apprehension began to fade, replaced by a strange warmth spreading through his body. Suddenly, the air around them seemed to crackle with energy. A faint hum began to build in the room, growing louder as the veins in the walls pulsed brighter in response to whatever was happening between them. Riley's breath hitched as a rush of warmth flowed from Zara's hands into his chest, spreading through his limbs like liquid fire. It was a strange, intoxicating sensation, his body buzzing with a mix of pleasure and tension, as if every nerve was being activated at once. Zara's eyes fluttered shut, and Riley could feel the connection forming between them. His pulse quickened, matching the rhythm of the hum in the air. He could feel something, his energy, his life force being drawn from him, flowing into Zara and, through her, into the ship. But instead of pain or discomfort, it felt euphoric. Riley's knees went weak as waves of sensation rolled through him. His mind was clouded, overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of the energy transfer. Every muscle in his body tensed and relaxed in sync with the pulsing lights around them. His thoughts began to blur, fading into a haze of pleasure and light. For her part, Zara seemed equally affected. Her breathing grew heavier, her fingers tightening their grip on his chest and neck as she absorbed his bioelectricity. Her body trembled slightly, as if she, too, was experiencing the overwhelming surge of power. The ship's systems roared to life in response to the energy transfer. Lights flared, and the hum grew into a steady, powerful vibration that shook the entire vessel. Riley could feel the ship awakening, responding to the connection between him and Zara. The veins on the walls pulsed in time with this shared energy, and for a brief moment, he felt as if he were a part of the ship itself, his mind connected to something far greater than himself. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the sensation began to fade. The warmth receded, the buzzing energy in his body dimming. Riley's legs gave out, and he collapsed onto the floor, gasping for breath. His entire body felt drained, like he had just run a marathon, but there was a lingering sense of satisfaction, a strange, euphoric afterglow. Zara released him and stepped back, her own breathing steadying. Her eyes opened slowly, glowing brighter than before, as if the energy she had absorbed had revitalized her. The ship's systems hummed with new life, the lights steady and strong now. "It is done," Zara said softly, her voice carrying a strange note of gratitude. "The core systems are fully reactivated." Riley sat up, still feeling lightheaded but relieved that it was over. "That was intense," he muttered, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Does it always feel like that?" Zara regarded him with a slight smile. "Only when the connection is strong." "You performed well, human." Riley let out a weak laugh, shaking his head. "Glad I could help, I guess." Zara walked over to the console and checked the ship's status, her fingers gliding over the controls. "The ship is fully operational now. I will prepare for departure." Riley's heart sank slightly at her words. Departure. He had helped her repair the ship, and now she was going to leave. But what about him? He pushed himself to his feet, still feeling a little wobbly. "So, what now? You just take off and leave me here?" Zara turned to face him, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then, she tilted her head slightly. "You have fulfilled your part of the agreement. I will not leave you stranded, human." Riley felt a wave of relief wash over him, though he wasn't entirely sure what she meant. "So, you're taking me with you?" Zara's eyes gleamed as she regarded him. "That depends," she said, her voice low and almost teasing. "You have proven useful. Perhaps there is more you can offer." Riley blinked, unsure if she was being serious or playing with him. But one thing was certain: his fate was now inextricably tied to this mysterious alien woman and her strange ship. And whatever came next, it was going to be an adventure he'd never forget. Riley leaned against the wall of Zara's ship, catching his breath as the aftereffects of the energy transfer slowly wore off. His limbs still felt like jelly, and his mind was reeling from the strange mix of pleasure, exhaustion, and confusion that coursed through him. He had just helped reactivate an alien ship through some sort of bioelectric exchange with a mysterious extraterrestrial woman. And now, as the ship hummed to life around him, reality was sinking in. He had no idea what came next. Zara stood at the central console, her slender fingers gliding over the holographic interface with effortless precision. The lights in the chamber brightened as the ship's systems came fully online, pulsing in sync with the steady hum of the vessel's power core. She glanced over her shoulder at Riley, her expression unreadable. "The ship is operational," she said, her voice calm and steady, though there was an underlying current of something else, something Riley couldn't quite place. "We can leave this planet." Riley exhaled in relief, though there was a nagging question gnawing at him. "So, what about me?" he asked, pushing off the wall and taking a few tentative steps forward. "You said you wouldn't leave me stranded, but what's the plan here? Are you taking me with you, or am I going to be dropped off somewhere?" Zara turned fully to face him, her glowing blue eyes studying him for a long, silent moment. There was something different in her gaze now, a certain softness that hadn't been there before, as though she were considering him in a new light. "You have proven to be more useful than I anticipated, human," she said slowly, her tone thoughtful. "It would be inefficient to discard you now." Riley blinked, caught off guard by the statement. "Inefficient to discard me? Thanks, I guess." He couldn't help but laugh, though it was more out of nervousness than amusement. Zara's choice of words was unsettling, but he was beginning to understand that her way of thinking was just different. "Alien." Zara raised an eyebrow, clearly not understanding the humor. "You misunderstand. You are not a tool, but you possess skills that may continue to be of value to me. I do not offer this lightly, human Riley. You may accompany me, if you so choose." Riley's breath caught in his throat. She was giving him a choice. Stay behind on this unknown planet, alone and stranded, or venture into the unknown with an alien woman whose motives were still something of a mystery. But there was something in her offer, something genuine, even if it was wrapped in cold, pragmatic language. He looked around at the glowing veins of energy pulsing through the walls, the sleek, organic curves of the ship's architecture. He had no idea where Zara was going, what kind of life awaited him beyond this planet, but the thought of staying behind, marooned on this alien world, was far more terrifying than the risks of the unknown. Well, Riley said, crossing his arms and giving Zara a small, wry smile. Considering my ship's not exactly spaceworthy, and my options are limited, I guess I'm coming with you. Zara's lips curved into the faintest of smiles, a rare expression of emotion that made Riley's heart skip a beat. Very well. You may be of use to me yet. She turned back to the console and began inputting coordinates. The galaxy is vast, and there is much you do not yet understand. But you will learn. Riley stepped closer to the console, watching as alien symbols and star charts flickered across the holographic display. So, where are we going? Zara's eyes flicked toward him, her smile fading into something more serious. My mission was interrupted when I was stranded here. I must resume it. Riley frowned, curiosity piqued. What kind of mission? Zara's fingers paused over the console, and for a moment she seemed to hesitate. When she spoke, her voice was softer, as though she were revealing something she had kept hidden for a long time. I am a scout. My people sent me to gather intelligence on the fringe worlds of your galaxy, to understand their resources and technology. She glanced at Riley, her eyes narrowing slightly. Including humans. Riley's stomach twisted. So, you're here to, what? Spy on us? Prepare for some kind of invasion? Zara's expression remained calm, but there was a flash of something in her eyes, an emotion he couldn't quite identify. Not all of us wish for conflict. Some of us seek to learn, to understand, to avoid the mistakes of our ancestors. She turned back to the console, inputting more commands. But not all of my people share that view. There are those who see your species as nothing more than a potential threat or a resource to be exploited. Riley's heart pounded in his chest. He was starting to get the picture now. Zara wasn't just some random alien traveler. She was part of something much bigger and much more dangerous than he had realized. And you? What do you think? Zara's glowing eyes met his, and for the first time, there was something deeply vulnerable in her gaze. I think your species has potential. You have a resilience that my people underestimated. That is why I chose to help you. Riley felt a strange sense of connection with her in that moment. Despite the vast differences between them, he could see the weight of her choices, the conflict she carried. She wasn't just a cold, calculating alien. She had doubts, questions, and her own reasons for doing what she did. So, what happens now? Riley asked, his voice quieter now. What's the next step? Zara turned back to the controls and pressed a final command. The ship's engines roared to life, the hum of power vibrating through the walls as the vessel prepared for takeoff. Now, we leave this world behind. There is much to do. You will assist me, and in return, I will ensure your safety. Riley nodded, the reality of his decision sinking in. He was about to leave everything behind Earth, his life as a simple trader, all of it on a journey into the unknown with a mysterious alien woman. But oddly enough, he didn't feel fear anymore. He felt excited. As the ship lifted off the ground, the jumble below shrinking into a blur of green and shadow, Riley found himself standing next to Zara at the console, watching the stars grow larger in the view ahead. The planet that had stranded them both receded into the distance, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Riley allowed himself to relax. Zara glanced at him, her glowing eyes softening. You made the right choice, human. Riley smirked, leaning back against the console. Yeah, well, you didn't really give me much of a choice, did you? Zara's lips curved into that faint smile again, and she turned her attention back to the stars. Perhaps. But you will find that there are many choices ahead of you, Riley. The ship shot into the darkness of space, leaving the planet and the jungle far behind. Riley stared out at the endless expanse of stars stretching before them, feeling a mix of wonder and anticipation. Whatever came next, it was going to be an adventure like no other. And for the first time, he felt ready.